If anybody self-identifies as a 10x engineer, they were probably an asshole. The 10x engineer isn't the person who knows they are. The 10x engineer who just truly loves what they do and they love making people better around them.
They are largely exaggerated and overrated. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and maybe it's self-selection in the industries that I've been working in, but I've only really ever worked with one person where I would see that level of productivity be so pronounced and different than others. Your system and your team is actually what's important. Obviously individuals matter. You have to prioritize your systems over your talent. You have to design your systems for the right talent and to maximize the abilities of the talent.
A lot of people will envision that the next engineer is just the person who just gets a lot of work done. They just get 10 times the normal work in isolation. The real 10Xers, the ones who are in the best engineering orgs, this is where they take the one individual and they help everybody do great work. There's anybody who just really cares can then do great work, because caring by itself isn't enough. Caring about the right things is where that one individual can help shape, hey, here are the right things to care about. Here are the things that are really going to help move the needle for us as an organization.
Welcome to Tech Council, your go-to podcast for mastering the art of building in the enterprise world. Join hosts Duncan Mapes and Jason Emke as they unpack the strategies, tools, and insights you need to drive innovation at scale. Brought to you by DevGrid, we're here to empower developers, tech leaders, and enterprise builders. Hit subscribe, and let's dive into today's episode.
Oh my goodness! So we made it to 10. That's made it to 10. Not too bad. Not too bad. We'll keep going at least for the foreseeable. No one has called and told us that we're hurting humanity with our ramblings. So
we might be. I mean, I'm going to reserve the right to be doing that, but the feedback has been great so far. People have been texting saying they love the episodes. It's been helping just to hear somebody say it kind of unfiltered.
Yeah. No, it's been cool actually. I think obviously you get feedback from friends, positive and negative, and some interesting ones from like former bosses and things like that, which is funny. The ones that I've appreciated the most were people reaching out that are kind of more early in their career that like I know but never worked closely with, like maybe somebody that was in a different organization, that within one of the banks or something like that, and so it's a very kind of tangential relationship, but they're getting some degree of mentorship out of the conversations and things like that. So that's really cool. So it's nice to have that level of sort of reach. And even if it's only people we know that listen to it, it's fine. It's good. It's worthwhile. So we'll keep going.
It's fun. I enjoy these. I think it's helpful for us just to keep having conversations. If it's just the two of us BSing for about an hour at a time, hey, you know what? There are worse ways to spend your time.
Indeed. All right, cool. So today we wanted to talk about an article that someone posted, that a Charity Majors posted, and she calls it "In Praise of Normal Engineers." If you don't know who Charity Majors is, she's the CTO of Honeycomb, I believe one of the co-founders as well. Kind of a good thought leader out there in the world of technology and software development and things like that. So she will regularly have some interesting content, and this was one that actually a friend of mine sent to me, and we both read it and said, hey, this is really good points, and I think it's a great framing. So we're kind of just going to walk through it. We'll post obviously the link to her blog, and she also has a deck because apparently she was doing this at some conference or whatever. So doing a talk on it at some conference. So we'll post both of those in the notes, but kind of wanted to just explore this topic for ourselves and read some of her points, but then also kind of add our own point of view, which doesn't ever really diverge heavily, but I think there's nuances and things like that.
I appreciate her candor here. I think there's some very direct feedback. It's a great article. If anybody hasn't read it, we'll put the article links in the show notes and give it a read. It's a great article.
Why don't you tell me what jumped out at you the most? What was the most interesting part of it, or along that theme of normal engineers? Like, where would you like to start?
I think the thing that really stood out to me the most is her opening a bit. And I mentioned this before too, but if anybody self-identifies as a 10x engineer, they were probably an asshole. And I really mean that in a way of, the 10x engineer isn't the person who knows they are. The 10x engineer who just truly loves what they do and they love making people better around them. And I think that's sometimes lost in a way of people who really do not just care about the coding, not just care about the team, not just care about the business or the outcomes. It's when you have that, you have one person who cares about everything so much that they live, breathe, and eat everything that they, in front of them. And it's that care. It's that person who really does give a crap about everything, all the things, their team, the people, the code, but also the outcomes. And that's, where that 10x engineer really comes in. But it's a little bit mythical in a way, but to me, it's the care and how that one person cares so much that they make everybody else care around them.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a good point, right? Like, I think in terminology matters probably, right? Like when people talk about 10x engineers, it's kind of, to your point, it's this the way I understand it is this mythological, Silicon Valley construct of, hey, there are some engineers that you get a power law of way more productivity out of them versus your typical engineer. And I think they are largely exaggerated and overrated, right? As a concept. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and maybe it's self-selection in the industries that I've been working in, but I've only really ever worked with one person where I would see that level of productivity be so pronounced and different than others, right? And that is extremely rare, and it comes with its trade-offs. And this is a big part of what like Charity's talking about, right? Like, yeah, a main point that she's sort of making is, and which I think we've made in our own way, through this podcast and others, is like, your system and your team is actually what's important. Like obviously individuals matter, right? Like you can't make up a team without individuals, but really you have to prioritize your systems over your talent, right? Because if you are, well, actually, let me say that better. You have to design your systems for the right talent and to maximize the abilities of the talent, right? And so it's not that you're prioritizing the systems over them, but it's the systems are the thing that matters, and the people feed into that, and how the systems can operate is a direct function of the type of people you put in, and then the way you do that. So the point being that the 10x engineers, one of the challenges is they tend to be very solo. They tend to kind of want to do their own thing. They tend to say, okay, I'll go do, the kind of the Moses figure that climbs the mountain and comes back with the tablets, right? Like it's, they come back with this giant PR. It's too much for anybody to actually really absorb. And it's like, you just have to take take this magical thing that they've given you. But
there's a balance of that though, right? You've hit some points on that, saying that this person goes into a deep dark hole, they come back with this giant PR, and then nobody can review it. They just say, hey, this is amazing because this is, your so-and-so that has got this status. They've got this, aura around them, and it's just treated as, this is amazing. But when you step back at that and say, is it though? If nobody can review it, if nobody can audit it, if nobody can say, is this good or bad? Is it? And I think that's something that's a little lost there. And then it can spiral out of control where you've built a whole code base around one person doing it their way, but nobody stepped back to say, is this the right way?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that we endeavor to do, and whether it's in, like I said, even in the tool within DevGrid, teams run applications, not people, right? Like you might have a single person who's kind of the throat to choke, but teams support things, not individuals. If you have individuals running stuff, you're just waiting for a problem. It's not a good way to do a business. I mean, early stage, sure, that's sort of inevitable because you just don't have a large enough team.
You have to.
But if you're running a company, if you're in an enterprise, which obviously most of the people we talk to, you've got to kill off those single points of failure. And I've had people, and the funny thing is most people are worried about addressing that because you're like, well, I don't want this person to feel devalued, right? Like when I was at the last place and I took over a horizontal organization and was responsible for like SRE and all those different types of things and all the kind of horizontal tech of platforms. There was one guy who was essentially keeping it all together. Like he was kind of like the Spider-Man with the webs holding it all together. And I sat down with him and we literally talked about it being part of his plan, part of his annual plan to make him non-essential compared to what he was. Like, and he, to his credit, had the kind of sense of security, to realize that was actually a really positive thing for him. And so that he wasn't constantly going to be the one getting woken up by every little problem. He wasn't the one that everything had to run through. It'd been very easy for him to feel insecure about that and feel like his job was being threatened, like his status was being threatened. Cause, he had the status as the guy, right? For this, couple 100-person organization, everything had to run through him. And he was the only real subject matter expert on where all the bodies were and how all the systems worked and all those different things, but we proactively went against after that, right?
The best people will realize that. They'll realize that, hey, you know what? I can't be this bottleneck. I can't be the single point of failure. And those are the real movers in a company, are those who can realize, hey, everything's going through me. I'm this bottleneck. We can be much more effective as an organization if we spread things out a little bit. If I'm just tangentially involved in the strategy, but then I'm out. So those are the real movers and the individuals who can really push the limits.
Yeah, because they can make everybody better, right?
Yes.
Because it decentralizes. You want to. I've said this before, and I know you largely agree, right? Like, decentralize everything you can, right? Like, it doesn't only have centralized decision making for things that must be centralized, and so that centralization could be informal as well, right? Which was the case, like with this guy, right? He had an informal authority where everything went through him, and nobody trusted it unless he blessed it. And that wasn't excellence. That wasn't engineering excellence. That wasn't a culture of excellence. And that was actually part of the reality, right? Like, we had one guy that cared, and cared a lot and was like trying to keep it all together. And then there was a bunch of people just kind of throwing stuff around. And so part of the maturation of that organization to become more broadly caring was distributing a lot of that responsibility and that accountability, right? And so it wasn't all on him. It was on the different application teams and different, all these other people, because we took the position, the intentional stance of saying like, all right, obviously we're not just going to rip ourselves out of the situation, have it all fall apart, right? But we're going to start pushing it down to other people, like push it out to the organization and make them accountable. And then they started to care more and they did better, right? And so it had a nice kind of virtuous cycle of building a better engineering and systems culture, because he was willing to give it away and he made everybody else better, because he was transitioning from keeping the lights on to being more of a teacher and a trainer and a culture carrier, and that just made everything better.
Yeah, that's what you get the 10x engineer, and a lot of people will envision that 10x engineer is just the person who just gets a lot of work done. They just get 10 times the normal work in isolation. The real 10xers, the ones who are in the best engineering orgs, this is where they take the one individual and they help everybody do great work. It's just that the normal engineers, back to that, what the article is mentioning, is that the normal engineers, anybody who just really cares, can then do great work, because caring by itself isn't enough. Caring about the right things is where that one individual can help shape, hey, here are the right things to care about. Here are the things that are really going to help move the needle for us as an organization. Now, I've had this conversation a few times with my teams, is that as you grow in seniority, as you step up the ladder, the things you care about go from individual to team to group to organization. And that's how you really help move the entire organization, is just say, hey, care about something a little bit higher than you. Care about one organization level thing. Stop caring about the variable name. Stop caring about, is it the function type. Care about the strategy of technology. And that's how you can help everybody do great work, not just yourself, not just your team, but everybody. And that's how you can influence and grow your influence.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, just kind of point of order, right? Like, I think what I'm hearing you say is really like what is understood as the 10x engineer in a large organization really isn't that useful. What you want kind of is like super normal engineers, right? Like you want normal engineers that kind of that can be super high performing, but the kind of that 10xer that's going to come in, do a bunch of work and then move out, like that's counterproductive in most cases, I guess.
Right.
Kind of what you're saying. Yeah.
Because they can be distraction. They can be distraction. They can just total ruffle feathers. They can, make everybody that I don't want to work with this person because they're too opinionated. They want it to do things their way.
Yeah. No, and that's Charity's calling that out pretty extensively. It's funny for me. And you and I both worked with this guy at a couple of places, but like there is one guy that I've actually worked with that I see as sort of falling in this category. And, he wasn't a jerk, and, he doesn't fit he was insistent on his way, and he had enormous credibility because he was very, very bright and very, very productive and all those different things. But I think we said like one time he tried to basically rebuild Express because he wanted it to be a little bit different or something like that. And so,
yes. You want to tweak out a little bit more performance out of it because it's a bloated package. So you're just trying to shave that down a little bit.
Exactly. Right. Like, and God bless him, he was hilarious. But, and if I use him as a caricature, right, like he wasn't bad for this team. In fact, he was amazing to put juniors with because he would be very caring and very mature. He would help them mature very fast. Like, I don't know anybody that we ever put on his team that doesn't adore him today. Like, and see him
I worked
as like
in one of his teams for a little bit.
Career.
I learned so much in just an hour of his time, just the way he was explaining things, the way he was talking about things, like, mind blown with just, it really is this simple and this is the structure. And it's those people who are the real 10xers.
Yeah. And again, double-edged sword, right? Like that guy and I worked together at like 3 different companies, but like he was about to quit about every 6 to 9 months because he just got so bored with everything. Right. And so it's like there are no solutions, only trade-offs, right? Like that kind of happens with people too, right? Like if you get really, really good at this in these one areas, sometimes it's harder to be sustainable in the others. And ultimately it comes down to people and trying to, get the best out of them, help them have their, be their best self, be their best engineer or whatever the role is. But again, I think as a leader, it comes back to this question of, you have to design an ecosystem, right? You have to design an organization. And I mean, I can be pretty critical of leaders and organizations in here. And obviously we don't, well, yeah. But, and obviously we don't have all the answers. We've screwed up more times than we haven't ourselves. And it's easy to sit here and make these comments, but at the same time, like, I do see a lot of organizations, and we have the advantage of being able to kind of go in and out of different organizations to try to help them either with software or sometimes with our advisory stuff. And so much of what they do is non-intentional, right? Like they are not designing an organization for excellence. They are not designing a system to make teams self-sustaining and to care for the whole application lifecycle and to have their talent strategy and their technology strategy linked together, right? And that's something I think that's super important. When you start thinking about your talent strategy as an organization, you say, okay, and HR organizations still exist for now, and so they sit down and they want you to kind of map these things out, and you have to say, okay, like what's the next 3 years going to look like in terms of staffing levels and where are these people going to come from? And there's a lot that goes into those things. Generally speaking, in those conversations, the ones that I've been in, all they're talking about is money. Mm-hmm. They're talking about funding and and all those different things. And that's fine. That's necessary. But my point being, it's not intentional about how are we going to design this group to be the right group of people and in a way that creates the right flywheel and we get the right culture and we get the right outcomes, right?
No, it's an afterthought. It's an afterthought or not thought of at all. It's just, I'm going to hire a bunch of people. Here's our mission. Here's what we got to deliver. And that's it. Just going to hire a bunch of people to do that. And it's not even a thought of that. This is an organism that you're building. It lives, it breathes, it evolves.
Yeah, and it's kind of tragic because the levers are extremely. I was having this conversation with someone a couple days ago, right? If you're in the C-suite of a major corporation, right, and call it a Fortune 500 corporation in America, right? The challenge that they have is it's very easy to critique the things they do, especially around things like staffing and stuff like that, because the closer you are to the ground level, their decisions are lacking nuance and completely ridiculous from the ground level. The challenge, though, like I have some empathy for them, because at the top of the house, if you're the chief HR officer or COO or CFO or CEO, whatever, you have very crude instruments, right? Like you have very crude levers. Like we're going to go, everybody return to office. We're going to go offshore. We're going to onshore. We're going to go, we're going to use contractors. We're, sign a big deal. We were talking to this one company that signed this giant deal with one of the Indian companies, and they basically just said, here, do all of our tech for us, right? And one of the big Indian staffing companies. And it was just like, obviously I don't agree with that strategy necessarily in terms of what you want to be from a competitive standpoint and all those different things. But again, you have empathy for them because they're having to make almost like what in history would have been country level decisions. Like these are tens of thousands of people, and they don't have the ability to get in there and build a nuanced situation when they need to actually start making change happen like tomorrow. And so that's just one of the downstream effects often. And again, it's no excuse for the people further down in the organization. But when the downstream effects is those things aren't designed for you at the top of the house, right? Like people don't think about it there. And then you're playing reaction mode to whatever seemingly arbitrary decision they've made. And that's hard. And you have to figure out how to incorporate that. And it helps to have a plan. It helps to have a point of view. And say, okay, hey, one of the things that we worked on together in the past at one place was we wanted a staffing strategy and technology strategy that were integrated, right? And so we looked around and said, okay, hey, we think a great way to grow our talent base over time is going to be, bringing juniors up through the ranks, and we wanted them to be local. Okay, so it's like, all right, so we need to hire 20 somethings in Charlotte, North Carolina. Great. What are they going to be good at, right? Were they going to be awesome Java and .NET engineers? No, they didn't want to work in that stuff. That was seen as, 2020 or 2000s, early 2000s tech. This was 2015, 2018, 2020. They wanted to work in things like Python and Go and JavaScript, TypeScript, right? It's like, okay, well, and then we pivoted into full stack JavaScript because one, we had to have UI developers, right? Like that was inescapable. It's like, well, if we're going to do that also, why not make the backends more approachable? So
you have to balance it off too, right? In that strategy, you said you've got a bunch of juniors coming up the ranks, your JavaScript, but to the earlier point is you need those mentors, you need the seniors to help mentor those individuals. But now part of the reason that we picked to balance it out a little bit is that if you hired all seniors, because if you ask anybody, I've asked a lot of people, who are you wanting to hire? All senior people. That's it. Only seniors.
Yeah.
But if you think about that, that sounds terrible because everybody's going to have an opinion. Everybody's going to have their way of doing things. Everybody's going to want no, this is the most important thing to care about. And I've seen it. I've seen it personally where you just get these super high performing individuals in a room and nobody agrees on anything. Like, this is the way we test. This is the way we write. This is a functional class based. It's object oriented. It's awful. And so we made that decision to say we need to balance that out a little bit so that we have the up and coming juniors, those individuals who are hungry, those who are, need open to be able to prove, open, malleable, with the seniors to say, here's how the right way of doing things is, so that, you can have that strategy grow and evolve into what you want it to be.
Yeah, no, you have to, the cultural stuff, you have to account for, there's organizational dynamics and there's team dynamics, right? Like what you're talking about is critical at the team level, right? Like you can't, if you put a bunch of seniors on a team and whatever term you use, staff, fellow, whatever, people that are really good and know they're really good. You put too many of them on a team and the team doesn't function well. It doesn't, because all the reasons you just stated, right? You need it's like I played sports, into my 20s, and it's like people talk about like it's programming is like a locker room. It's like, no, man, the hierarchy in programming is actually way more intense even than the pecking order and hierarchy in like a football locker room, right? And but at the same time, like there's one of the reasons that those types of teams can be highly functioning is everybody kind of knows where they stand, right? But if everybody, that's why like the super teams in basketball sometimes aren't underperform, right? Because everybody's got to kind of play a role that isn't necessarily the role they want to play. And whereas you get a team of the right mix of people can outperform better talent. And I think a lot of that's kind of what we're talking about is design the right mix of people, and you get a better talent. And I think the full stack thing, personally, I think there's a lot to that. And I think that's even more becoming the case, right? I saw something over the weekend. I forget who it was. I wish I'd saved it. Somebody was saying like, hey, one of the outcomes of the AI coding tools is everyone's going to be expected to be full stack. Like there's just no real argument for being hyper specialized in the AI world, because really the specifics of the individual platforms is getting, the secret knowledge you needed to have to do this right or to do that right.
That's where I'm going to disagree a little bit there, because I still think you need to have those hyper specialists to say, because the AI tools, they're great. They're a catalyst. They help push you forward. They write based off of what it's predicting is the right thing. It doesn't know if it's the right thing. Now, if you just have a lot of full stack individuals who are writing this code and they're pushing it in, like you don't know if it's right or not. I actually just had this conversation with ours the other day. He said, I don't know if this is right or not, but the AI told me it is. So he asked me, is it? But the reality is you still need to have those specialists to check, is this the right thing? Because the worst thing you can do is have this AI tool writing a bunch of code. A full stack developer has now committed it, pushed it in, and all of a sudden you are missing some critical security on an API. Or you are logging some potentially private information that the specialist may not have, the specialist would have caught, but the full stack may not have. So you still need to have those experts in one or the other. So you can't be an expert in everything. That's just not technically possible.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out, right? Like, I mean, I think, and it's also hard to not look at the world through your own eyes. And I kind of view myself as not a very good software engineer, but I can do just about everything. And so that's sort of the way I see the world. And especially can do just about everything using these tools, right? Like that's the thing for me is it's opened up. I've seen it open up things that I was scared to touch. And it's harder. It doesn't make it like I think we mentioned it. I rewrote something in Go and I didn't want to, but it kind of was forced to by a technical limitation. And now I need to update it and it's harder and slow, but I can still do it. I think my point is the problem is becoming more, not the problem. The problem you're solving, the task is becoming slightly more generic, whereas you're saying, hey, build this thing. It's not write this thing in Java. It's not write this Java app. It's build this thing. And so, you can't neglect your requirements. You have to have the right security. You have to have, so I'm not suggesting that you have like some UI dev is just going to automatically all of a sudden be able to really easily write backend code and do it perfectly. That's not the point I'm making. What I'm trying to say is I think over time I don't think there's jobs for people to do just the one thing, right? I think that's the deal. Like over time, not tomorrow. Like we have guys on our team that are just focused on UI, for example. But I think what I would say is I think you have to pull up. I think over time, those jobs become more of you pull up a level and you might have a specialization in this area, but you kind of need to be able to do it all as well.
I think to that point, I would agree more with that. You will have a specialty, but you can do all the things, not all the things amazing, but you'll know at least a specialty of some backend. Kind of, I've used this example before, but I think it was Facebook or Meta or they had one person change from a passing by a value or to a reference, and they saved 10 servers or 10 data centers worth of processing power.
Huge amount of processing power.
Huge amount, just because they had one expert come in and say, just change this pointer. That was it.
Yeah.
And so but that doesn't, the AI tool is not always going to find that. The specialist is, and You have to be able to do all the things, but do something really, really well so that you can round off the team in a way.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that specialties won't go away. I think what I'm saying is that being only a specialist in a narrow area is going to be in much less demand.
Yeah, I would agree.
Right?
And you might have a
just a
huge
UI
organization,
dev, right? For example.
Yes, right.
Like
That's just
I
not
don't
gonna be
think that that's a job 5 years from now, right? Like, because like I'm playing with these tools. Like, one of the reasons, I mean, React, the browser's modernizing and becoming not a nightmare. Which, I mean, guys that are coming up now, the coders that are
so
coming
lucky.
Up now have no idea.
Oh, they are so lucky
to deal with IE6 and that nonsense.
6,
right?
7, 8.
So,
I think we at one point I had to go 5 versions back because
and then it was just a nightmare. They were
terrible.
They were all a disaster, right? So it's like it's a lot easier to do good UI code. You've got the design aspects are wild, right? Like how the AIs are able to help with like making things look better and all those different types of things. So I just think that the expectation is going to be more and more and more that you can do that right. And the idea that you're just like, I'm going to be a React ninja and just focus on that. I just think that that's going to be not good enough because I think people are going to need more fungibility in what happens. I mean, certainly, even in our environment, like that's, we, you might do ETL one day, you might do, some API development, you might be doing some UI, you might be doing some API key management, right? Like you're all over the place. And so
I think that might be true in some mega corporations or like a Meta or Google. They would likely still have UI engineers just because of the nature of their structure, right? But it's more of a structure instead an ownership versus a, this is what we need.
But that's a really good point. Like I just saw, so a bunch of things going on in AI, right? Like Meta just scooped up a bunch of like top talent and just created this new like super intelligence team or whatever. Well, one of the guys on that team, which is kind of a wild thing, he was one of the creators of Redux, right? And like Redux was like probably the biggest state library for React, right? So he was a React developer, effectively, a JavaScript UI in browser developer who's now on this super intelligence team, right? So that guy's just a killer engineer, right? He might have specialized in that project in that space because it was interesting to him, right? But he wasn't limited to that. Now, again, we're talking about somebody who's like making $10 million a year as a software developer. So like totally different class of talent. But the point being, I think I'm agreeing with you and just saying it a little bit differently is like, you're right. Specialties will still exist, but it won't be like it has been in the past where like I have my bubble and I only know my bubble and I'm an expert in my bubble, but don't ever ask me to do anything other than my bubble because I'm going to throw a fit and quit. Right.
Exactly.
And like that's gone. Like that's over even I think today.
That's you can absolutely see that. It's the writing's on the wall for that.
Yeah.
No, but it's still going to be in some enterprises are still going to be putting people in that corner. I was like, no, you own the UI, you only do UI, and that's going to take a long time because just the corporate structures.
I mean, we saw that at one of the banks. We intentionally tried to break that down, and it just really
so much resistance because of the ownership and the roadmaps, and it's just a nightmare. The corporate structures.
It's just tricky. I mean, obviously, it takes people that'll design an operating model around it, and it's not too hard to convince the business of the value of it because you end up you can have fewer teams and people can be more dedicated and you have fewer dependency lines and things like that.
You have so much more malleability to what you work on. You could split up a team and work on two very related processes, put so much capacity here or there. There's so many benefits. We can probably do a whole episode on that.
Yeah. But the point I was making is like, it's easy to outline the benefits. It's very difficult to change the behavior.
Yes.
Even when people conceptually are on board with it, it's still been a challenge. So, but yeah, I think that's all. The AI stuff is just so interesting in terms of its impact. One of the things Chris and I talked about while you were out was we talked, the resistance, how kind of the React native and native kind of dichotomy, and and how sort of especially the iOS ecosystem of native development might be the last little holdout, right? Like it's the area where you really have purists and they have convinced, I don't want to make it sound malicious, but like there's enough people that believe that thing is so unique and special that they're going to kind of leave it in its own little island for a while, for the foreseeable, although it is breaking down, right? Like we're seeing a lot of enterprises move to React Native. One, because those types of specializations are becoming more and more expensive and harder to staff, and they're just kind of a nightmare organizationally, like we're talking about. Also because, the tools are just getting so good. Like at this point, like why would you even bother unless you really, really need to be deeply native?
And there's reasons. There's still reasons for that too. But yeah, I agree with you that most teams, most groups can easily use React Native and not ever look back and go much faster. There's most of the time, unless you need raw performance or you're writing so much native code anyway to interface with the APIs that it's just...
See, that's how I know you didn't listen to our podcast. We already did this. We went into this full blow. I'm kidding. You wouldn't have seen it yet because it just got done this morning. So, but no, this is exactly, you're agreeing with us talking about this for an hour last week. So it's good. All right. What else do we want to hit here? The main thing we were sort of wanting to call out, I think, right, was, design for normal. We agree, celebrate the normal engineer. Like we agree with Charity's, comments there, and then design the system, right? Like design the system for the team. Understand who your subject matter experts are, but diversify them. Don't just have one. Don't have single points of failure, things like that. What else? What else should we hit?
I'm going through the deck right now. It's a great deck. I really agree with a lot of what she's saying. And I think something to stand out is that great engineers are made, not born. And that's where a lot of people will hire. I want to hire a great engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Change that into a phrase that I want to hire somebody who could be made into a great engineer. And that's where you can hit the mark of this person, maybe not great today, but in 3 months, they're going to help shape the organization to where we need it to be.
Yeah, the reality is, I think Charity even hits this, right? Like the truly great talents, they're 95% of companies are never going to be even in the running for them, right? Like because they can go and attract the money from the Metas, from the Googles, et cetera, or whatever the hot startup is, OpenAI, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to go to those places and they're going to get attracted into those places. But I think instead of, I think the term that keeps coming to mind is this concept of like a system quarterback, right? Like you hear that term and, like for the longest time, people call Tom Brady a system quarterback. Like he wasn't that good, but then and that may have been kind of true initially, but eventually the guy helped sustain excellence across decades, right? And be kind of the cornerstone of all that type of stuff. And eventually it became, there's a lot of people no one would really argue he was a system quarterback at this point, but he was, I think, for a portion of his career, right? And I think that's kind of illustrating, using sports to sort of illustrate, it's like, if you want to be really successful over time, you design an ecosystem that's going to develop the talent and then hire the right type of talent into that ecosystem, right?
Well,
like don't go hire super ego people.
People see that. I've had interviews where I've talked about our systems, I talked about the team, I talked about the organization, the structure, and that really resonates with people who want to do great things. And it's actually going to push off people who don't want to do great things. I've had people tell me that, I've got an offer from Amazon, from Facebook, from whomever sitting on my desk right now, and I'm going to deny it because working on this team sounds so incredible because of the freedom that we get, because of the ability to just make decisions. So, one person went off to Snapchat instead, but he said to me that, Jason, if this wasn't such a strong opportunity with Snapchat, I know I'm going to be working my ass off there. I know it's going to be nightmare hours, but like you two are on par with each other. They just edge you out a little bit because of the name. But the systems that you build, the organization that you build, 10 out of 10 times is going to hire the best people.
Yeah, for sure. And
I
again,
say that intentionally. It's that the system is going to hire the people, not you. The system is going to pull in because it's so attractive to everybody else.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we saw that at Passport, right? We had a run there where we were designing, an ecosystem and a hiring process, which is how you sort of, your hiring process tells the person a lot about you, because that's what they learn, right? Is about. I mean, nobody turned those jobs down at the end, right? Like, and we weren't paying top of market by any stretch. But the caliber of people we were putting in the room with them to interview, the process, the feedback they were getting along the way, all those different things, like really built that same thing. And I know the story you're talking about was later on, but just to say, hey, like, we've seen that in multiple places. If you do it right, you create a flywheel, because people, the best way to find good engineers is have your, engineers really like being on your team, and then they have friends and
they sell it for you,
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, good job, Charity. It's awesome.
Great article.
Thanks for
Love
the content. And we'll make sure to have the links posted for those of you that can't find it. But her website is charity.wtf. And then, obviously the links are in there. So good stuff. Thanks for joining us again today. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
That's a wrap for this episode of Tech Council, brought to you by DevGrid. Thanks for joining us as we dive into building smarter solutions for the enterprise. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, leave us a rating, and share your thoughts on X, at DevGrid Inc., or at devgrid.io. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll explore more ways to thrive in the enterprise. Until then, keep building.